Hello everyone, my name is Jane and welcome to the worst books of 2021. This is the video that I'm going to rant about the books that I disliked the most in 2021. It's really weird to say 2021 and not this year, but we are not in 2021 anymore, which is amazing. But it's time to talk about the books that disappointed me the most in 2021. Now, unfortunately, I had a pretty long list and I got it down to 10 books. Some of those books are books that I gave 1 or 2 stars, just books that I really disliked. And some of those books are books that I DNF'd and I just didn't want to continue reading them. Now, I have books on this list that I don't think that are actually bad, but for me personally, they were really disappointing. And some books I actually think were really bad. So I'm going to talk about everything today. I think it's going to be really fun to rant about everything. But please remember that this is my personal opinion. Also, books that I didn't enjoy or books that I felt bad about are books that I saw people give 5 stars to. And all of us are different readers, so that's totally okay that I have books that I didn't enjoy from. Also, if you enjoyed from, I think it's really interesting that all of us have different reading opinions, and that's really fun. But yes, let's start talking about the 10 worst books that I read in 2021, and I'm going to talk about them in the order that I read them. The first book that is for me one of the worst books of 2021 is My Sister, the Serial Killer by Oinikan Braithwaite. I'm sure that I'm pronouncing the name wrong, so I'm really sorry about that. But basically, this story is following a woman that her sister killed already a few of her boyfriends, and the main character of the story tries to help her sister to hide what she was doing so that her sister won't go to jail. Now, I think that the main reason that I didn't enjoy this book was the writing. The writing was really fast, but in a way that I didn't feel really connected to the story. I'm a plot-driven reader, and I do tend to enjoy more fast-paced books, but the writing just made me hate all of the characters, and also, I didn't like any of the characters, and I also didn't like the plot. It had really good potential, but the execution of the plot wasn't good in my opinion, and I think it was really predictable. Some people were really surprised from the end. I wasn't. It was really predictable to me, and I just feel like this book was so underwhelming. I heard really good reviews about it, but it was so short, and the only reason that I actually finished it is because it was so short. And yes, it was my first 1 star of 2021, and I just didn't like this book at all. Now, the next book was actually my first DNF of 2021, and this is Wilder Girls by Rory Power. Now, this cover is stunning. This is basically a YA horror story with some kind of a mystery. It was one of the first horror books that I read, and I do feel like horror in general is a pretty hit or miss genre, because I feel like specifically horror is so different from each other, and the main horror element here was body horror, which I don't love, but I also don't hate. But the reason that I didn't enjoy this book at all was that the plot, in my opinion, wasn't interesting at all. Now, I actually read a really good amount of this book. I actually cannot remember how much, but I think that I read 2/3 of the book, which is pretty a lot. I read most of it, and I just felt like the plot wasn't going really anywhere, and it had a really good potential because we are following some kind of boarding school, but there is some kind of disease in this boarding school. They are on an island, and they can't escape this island because they have a disease, and everyone are trying to isolate them so they won't spread the disease outside of the island. So the idea was really good, and it was really interesting in the start to see how everything is managed and how nobody cares about those girls in this boarding school. So the idea was amazing, but the execution, I just didn't like it. I feel like although the idea was so good and there was so much potential to the plot itself was actually really boring. And I think that also the characters, they had a lot of potential to be so much more interesting, but they weren't actually that interesting. Also, the main character wasn't really interesting at all to me. So yes, it was a really big disappointment because I was really expecting this book. And yes, I just DNF'd it. Like you already know, I read a good amount of it, but it was a DNF, and it was really disappointment for me. Now, the next book is another DNF, and this is those kind of books that I don't think they are bad. This book just wasn't for me. This is This Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. Now, I was really sad that I didn't enjoy this book because I really love Chloe Gong's personality, on TikTok and on Twitter. I really love her tweets. She's really funny, and I really wanted to love her books too. And I don't think that this book is bad. I just think that this book is the perfect example for books that are not for me. The the writing was really, really nice. It's basically an historical fiction, but there is also some kind of fantasy because there is a mystery, and it's supposed to be Romeo and Juliet retelling, but I felt like the romance, like there was a romance, but I just didn't feel like it was a big part of the story, and I didn't feel like it satisfied me in the sense of the Romeo and Juliet retelling. Now I DNF'd it, I think, in 100 pages, something like this, so I didn't read the majority of the book, and I'm sure that the book is interesting for some people. Like, obviously it's so hyped up, so many people are giving it 5 stars, but for me, also the romance was pretty disappointing, especially because I didn't see it really progressing anywhere. The mystery wasn't really interesting to me in any way. I felt like it was pretty pointless. It didn't make me want to read the book. I wasn't intrigued at all, and honestly I'm pretty happy that I DNF'd it, because again, it just isn't for me. I don't think it's bad, but it was a disappointment for me. But it just made me realize that I'm much more plot-driven reader, and although I can totally enjoy a book that is character-driven, I do need a really interesting plot. Also, if the plot itself is really slow, I do need this interesting plot for me to want to continue reading a book, and for me this plot wasn't interesting. So yes, I didn't enjoy this book and I DNF'd it. Now the next book is a book that the idea sounded amazing and perfect for me. This is Tokyo Ever After by Emiko Jin. Now this book described as The Princess Diaries meet Crazy Rich Asians, which is 2 movies that I love so much. Basically, we're following a teenager that she's finding out that her father is part of a Japanese royalty family, and she's basically royalty. She just lives in the US with her mother and she never knew it. And in the story, she's moving to Japan to meet her father and learn more about her Japanese family. And also there were the bodyguard trope in this book, which is one of my most favorite tropes, so I was so excited to read it. And I don't think that the plot was really bad. Like, the plot has a lot of potential, and this is the main reason that I actually finished it until the end. But the execution and the characters were so bad in my opinion. The characters felt so young and so arrogant, and I just didn't like the main character at all. I felt like there wasn't any character development, and she was really, really selfish and really self-absorbed, and I didn't love her at all. I don't feel like she actually learned anything in the book. Everything came to her really, really easily. Like, just everything worked perfectly for her. And also when there were struggles in the book, I don't feel like the main character actually was having those struggles. Like, she was sad, and of course there were struggles, but I didn't feel like those struggles really impacted the character. So I was really, really disappointed from this book, especially because the idea is amazing, the cover is pretty, and I do think it had a really good potential. Just the execution was so bad. The characters were just so childish. And yes, it was just really sad, and I didn't like it at all. And I think I gave it 2 stars, but it actually felt to me like 1 star because the execution was really bad in my opinion. So yes, another really big disappointment. Now the next book is another DNF, and I think this is the last DNF for this list, and this is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. Now I can say that this was one of my most anticipated releases because I found out about this book pretty soon to its published date, but since I found out about it, it became one of my most anticipated releases because this is basically a YA fantasy story that sounds amazing because the main character of the story lives in a world, and in this world every year all the 16-year-old girls are going to some kind of ceremony, and the purpose of this ceremony is to find out if they bleed irregular blood or gold blood. There are women that bleed in gold blood, and those women are basically cursed, and the main character of the story goes to this ceremony, and then she is finding out that she has a gold blood, so they take her from her village and from her family and friends. So the idea itself sounded so good. Like, I was so excited to read it. Also the cover is so gorgeous, it looks amazing, and I think I DNF'd it also in 100 pages. I think there were 300 pages, so I read a fourth of the book, and I was so underwhelmed from this book because first of all, it was such a young YA, and this is the problem with YA because it's such a big range of ages, and when you're reading YA, you don't really know if to expect a really, really young YA or a really mature YA. But this was so young. The main character of the story is 16. She felt to me like 12 years old, even younger. Like, I didn't feel that she was 16 in any way. Like, no way that she is 16. Just no way. And the thing is that also all the story felt too much of I'm saying what is happening and not showing how it's happening. Like, for example, there was a part of the story that the main character was living to another place, and we didn't saw really the journey, and then we just time traveled to the end of the journey, and then suddenly she became friends with more people, and like, we didn't really saw how she became friends with other people. It's nice that the author says to us, they are friends now, but why they are friends? Like, we didn't see any chemistry between them, but I just feel like everything here was so bad, and the execution was so bad, and yes, I just didn't like it at all, and I DNF'd it, and it was a really big disappointment, unfortunately. Now the next book book is a book that I gave 2 stars. It isn't one of the worst books that I read this year, but it's definitely one of the most disappointing ones. And that's why this is on this list. And maybe a lot of you are going to be surprised, but this is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. But yes, I disliked Red, White and Royal Blue, and I was anticipating it so much. Like, I was sure that I'm going to love it because I do love royalty. I do love enemies to lovers, but I didn't love this book like at all. But this book really helped me to learn more about my reading and what I love about reading, because basically this book isn't bad. Like, the writing is nice. It's basically an adult romance story, a male romance, and first of all, I didn't like the characters at all, and this story is 100% really character driven. So like, if I don't like the characters, I won't enjoy the book. That's logical. But except it, I feel like the plot wasn't really moving anywhere. The thing that I really learned from reading this book is that I'm a plot-driven reader, but for me, the most important thing in a plot is that the plot will have some kind of structure and that I will feel like I'm moving forward. Because if the plot is messy and if the structure of the plot is really messy, I don't feel like I'm moving forward with the plot anywhere, and I don't feel satisfied because of it. And I'm sure that there is people that love those exact books, but for me, those books made me really don't enjoy reading. And I feel like this book is the perfect example for it, because there was plot, but not really. Like, the plot was pretty messy, just things happened, and there wasn't anything that we are actually moving forward to. Now, the last 10% of this book was actually really enjoyable. There was plot, there were things happening, but it was only the last 10% of the book, so unfortunately I didn't enjoy most of it. And yes, overall this book was just really disappointment for me. It's not bad, just another book that is personally not for me. The next book is a really interesting one, and this is Better Together by Christine Riccio. This book was so bad. I'm sorry that I'm saying it, but it actually felt like I'm reading a book that 10 years old wrote. I really can't understand how this book was published. There wasn't any editor that read the book and understood that this book is really not logical. Like, maybe I'm just not the age group for this book. Like, the characters didn't actually feel young, so that's why I feel like it's a YA book, but maybe it's for 10 years old. I don't know, I'm not sure, but this book was just so not real. But although it was so bad, I still enjoyed it a little bit. Like, I read the audiobook and the narrator was good, and she made the whole story pretty funny, and it was really funny to listen to it because it was so bad, and it didn't feel to me like a real book, like, honestly. Now, basically, this book is supposed to be like The Parent Trap. You have 2 sisters that were separated because their parents got divorced, and each one of them are living with the other parent, and after a lot of years, they are meeting together again in a summer camp or something like this, and there is a magical realism to this story, because the 2 main characters in some part of the story are switching bodies between each other. Now, the whole magical realism thing was just not good at all. I also read the reviews in Goodreads. I don't think anyone liked the magical realism thing, and like, I think that this book could achieve everything that he wanted to achieve also without this magical realism, because this magical realism between them switching bodies wasn't explained in any way. It just happened, and it was really weird, and it wasn't logical in any way, and I don't think it was good for the book. But except the magical realism thing, just the whole story felt really bad. And I don't think that the characters and the plot were bad, just the execution was really bad. But yes, overall this book wasn't good at all, and I will definitely not recommend it. Now, the next book is a book that I strongly hate. Like, all of those books on this list were pretty disappointing for me, but I don't think any of them are books that I actually hate. But this book I hate. I hate it in all of my heart. I just hate this book so much. And I'm pretty sure that this book won in the Goodreads Choice Award in 2021. So like, a lot of people love this book, but I just hate it so much. And this is The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. And honestly, I'm mad on myself that I didn't DNF this book, because definitely this is a book that I should have DNF'd. I didn't enjoy it in any part of the book, and also it was pretty long. Like, I listened to it in the audiobook, and I think it was 12 hours or something like this. It took me a lot of time to get through the audiobook. Like, it took me a lot of days. I'm not sure why I didn't DNF it. Now, basically, this is a horror book, and this is a slasher horror book, like slasher movies. I don't love slasher movies, so I guess that I also don't love slasher books. Like, it's logical to me. And I just feel like, again, horror is a hit or miss genre. And I feel like some kind of horrors will make you sick. Like, also, if you read horrors all the time, and also if you love gore stuff, I do feel like some horrors will make some people sick. And I feel like this horror made me really sick, and I didn't love it at all. I really hated the characters. I really hated the main character. Like, I hated her so much. I didn't love her choices, or what she was doing, or how she was thinking. I didn't agree with her actions. performance or how she was acting in all of the book. And there were so many parts of the book that I was so confused of how we got here, why it's happening like this, what happened. And also a lot of parts in the story just felt to me too much over the top, like in a way that I'm not sure that those things actually will happen in real life. And like this book is definitely for slasher movies fans, which is not me. I hate slasher movies. So maybe this is the reason that I didn't enjoy it. And it was really big disappointment, and I would definitely needed to DNF this book. Now the next book is a graphic novel, and this is This One Summer by Gillian Tamaki and Mariko Tamaki. Now I was so disappointed from this graphic novel, especially because I expected a lot from it. Mariko Tamaki is the author of Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which is the only graphic novel that I ever gave 5 stars to. It's my most favorite graphic novel. I loved it so much. It was so good, so emotional, and so deep. And I feel like this story is the exact opposite of it. Now, first of all, I didn't like the illustrations at all. There is different illustrator to this graphic novel, and Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me. Now, the illustrations weren't really bad. Like you can see, they were pretty nice. It's not a bad illustration style. It's just a style that I personally enjoy from less. Like again, it isn't really bad. It's nice in its own way, from my personal opinion. And from my personal experience of reading a lot of graphic novels, this is definitely an illustration style that I enjoyed less from. But the main reason that I didn't enjoy this book at all was the plot and the characters. This is again those kind of plots that I'm not feeling like it's going anywhere. Like there isn't any structure to the plot. I don't get the point of this story. This is basically about a teenager that every summer goes to a vacation with her family, and she has a friend in this vacation, like it's near the sea or something like this. And this is their last summer together because her parents are getting a divorce, and also her mother is pretty sad. And I do feel like it touched really good topics, and it had a lot of potential to explore those topics really, really well. And I also saw that a lot of people did enjoy this graphic novel, but I just felt like it didn't really make sense to me. Like the topics were really important, and I do love seeing those topics in books, but just I didn't love the execution. I don't feel like it had any point. I just feel like all those topics were thrown to the book, but didn't really make any sense and didn't really have any purpose. And I just was so underwhelmed from this book. And again, I expected so much because it's from the author of my most favorite graphic novel, and this is now the worst graphic novel that I read. So it's like really funny that this author is also the best and also the worst. So I was really, really disappointed from it, and it was really sad for me. But yes, unfortunately, that was it. And now the last book on this list is a book that was one of my most anticipated releases of 2021. I read it, I think, 2 months ago. It was so disappointment for me, like just so disappointment. And this is The Project by Courtney Summers. Now, Courtney Summers wrote Sadie. Sadie was nice. I didn't love it. Like it was, I think, 3 stars, but it was really nice, and I really enjoyed the writing. And it felt like Courtney Summers has so much potential in her writing and in her books. And the idea of this book sounded amazing. We're basically following a woman that when she was younger, she got into an accident with her family. All of her family died except her, and she went into a coma. Now, the only family member that was alive except from her was her older sister that wasn't in this accident. And while the main character was in a coma, her sister went into a cult, and she prayed for her sister to be saved. And her sister actually waked up from the coma, and since there, the older sister just lost touch, and she continued being in this cult. And the main character of the story basically tries to understand what is happening and what is this cult and why her sister is there. Actually, in the beginning, it was pretty interesting. Obviously, it was one of my most anticipated releases, so I really wanted to love this book, but as I continue reading it, it just got so much worse. The thing is that this book is a mystery thriller. It wasn't not a mystery and not a thriller. You didn't have really any mystery. Like there was the mystery of what is going in the cult, but not really, because you knew what is going in the cult, and this book wasn't thrilling in any way. It wasn't not a thriller, not a mystery. I'm not sure how you can call it, maybe a fiction. It didn't satisfy me. It wasn't not a thriller, not a mystery. I do think that if we followed the older sister more, because it was dual POV and we did some things from the older sister, I do think if we were more with her and if she was the main character of the story, it could be so much more interesting. But I just felt like it was so pointless at some point. This is definitely one of the most biggest disappointments of this year. And yes, it's really sad. So yes, those were the 10 worst books that I read in 2021. Again, not all of them are actually bad. Just all of them are books that I didn't like and books that I was disappointed from. Yes, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Please tell me, what is the worst book that you read in 2021? Is it something from this list or is it another book? Please let me know. But yes, those were the worst 10 books of 2021. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. 2021. Bye everyone.